Hey guys, thanks for joining me on this edition of NerdRx NAPLEX. I'm Tuan, and Anesh is not here. He's got his own thing going on right now. He can't be here for this episode, but he'll join us next time. But today we're going to be talking about the 2017 NAPLEX, which is different than the NAPLEXs before that. This was introduced in November of 2016. It is substantially longer. It has gone to now a 6-hour time-limited test and 250 questions. It's no longer an adaptive test, meaning if you get questions wrong, the easier it will get. And if you get questions right, the harder and more difficult the questions become. They've changed that now and it's just a standardized test, 6 hours long with 2 breaks in between. So I've got a friend that just graduated from pharmacy school this year and he just took it and he passed. Congratulations, Tang. And he's going to talk with us a little bit about the test, what to expect, how he studied for it, and maybe give us a little bit of insight into the testing. And then after we've interviewed Tang and talked to him about it, I'm going to give you a couple of tips and hints and what I've seen and what I've heard from our fellow colleagues and friends about what to expect on the test and how to study for it effectively. Stick around. All right, guys, I got Tang with me here today. Tang, thanks for joining us today. So just give the viewers a quick rundown of your name, school, what are you going to be doing as a pharmacist?
So my name is Tang, and I graduated just this last May, class of 2013. And I'm going to be working just community pharmacy, just working for a retail chain.
You said 2013.
Oh, sorry. Class of 2017. So I actually started school in 2013, so class of 2017.
Okay, all right, cool. Okay, so did you recently take the NAPLEX?
Yes, I just passed it a couple weeks ago.
Congratulations, sir. You also took the law portion, but we won't be talking about that today because every state has different laws. There are a couple things that Tang and I can't disclose about the NAPLEX legally, so is that a disclaimer? So just for you guys out there that are looking for specific questions, we're not going to talk about specific questions. So if that's what you're here for, sorry, that's not what we're going to be talking about. Tang can't talk about it, but he can talk in generalities and study tips and whatnot, so that's what we're going to be doing today. So Tang, tell me about the NAPLEX itself. Did they discuss about what the differences were between the old NAPLEX and the new ones?
So the new NAPLEX is 250 questions, which is different than the old one. I think it was a shorter test, 180 something. It was also a 4-hour test, the previous one. The new one that I just took was 6 hours.
That's the maximum time limit?
That is, yeah, you're allotted 6 hours to take the test.
Okay.
And they also changed the fact that it used to be a dynamic test, from what I'm familiar with. I'm pretty sure that's what you took too, was that it changed according to how you answered the questions, the difficulty level.
Yeah, so basically how the old NAPLEX was, if you got more questions right, the more difficult the exam got. The more questions wrong you got, the easier the questions got. So your questions kept getting easier and easier. It was an indication that you were getting some of the questions wrong. But in your understanding, this test was not like that?
From what we were told, that this test is a fixed test. So you were given, the set of questions was just whatever it was. It doesn't change dynamically.
Okay. The test is 6 hours, 250 questions. Were you allotted breaks?
Yes, you're allowed 2 10-minute breaks, to which the 10 minutes are not counted against you. I mean, you could take those breaks if you want. I only took 1 break, and I just wanted to finish the rest of the test. So.
Okay. How long did you take, just from a personal note?
Me, don't judge it based on me, but I'm generally a slow test taker. I take my time and I think through things. I took up the whole time. I was in there almost 6 hours.
So what's the format? Was there a lot of multiple choice, fill in the blank, anything like that, or what kind of questions were on there?
Yeah, so just your typical questions that most prep courses have for you, like practice questions, is they have fill in the blank, select all that apply, and multiple choice. Fill in the blank are basically just stuff that you have to calculate and whatnot.
No short answer or anything like that?
No short answer, not that I remember.
We're going to talk about NAPLEX preparation. So what did you use to study?
My school, we used RX Prep. I think most schools use that.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much standard across the board. Schools will offer the RX Prep. Were you given a review session at the end of the 4th year?
Yes, they had a RX Prep person come in and she lectured us for a week straight on
Yeah.
major topics that people would be generally weak at. We also had a book, and then we also had access to the website where we could practice problems. That's the main material that I used. I didn't really use much else.
You didn't use anything else? You didn't buy any supplements like brand generic flashcards or anything like that?
No, I didn't do any of that. I just used whatever was in the book.
Okay. Did you find the review course to be helpful?
For me personally, it definitely is helpful. Depending on how you were in school, if you had a good foundation, some people might not need that. For me, like it was kind of like it was just refreshing for some things that I already knew. Some of the stronger sessions where they just spent more time talking about how to strategically study, and that's what I found most helpful. Not so much the material itself.
Okay. How long would you say you study for in terms of weeks and?
I actually started looking at the RX Prep book early on, like maybe a few months out from graduation, let's say February.
Oh wow, you started early.
Yeah, the thing is, I wasn't studying like hardcore every day like that.
Okay.
Maybe on a weekend, I would just read a chapter. And that would be it. So in essence, I would just look at chapters that I was very weak at, or chapters that had a lot of content.
Okay.
I wanted to like really get my eyes on that first.
Okay.
And just in case towards the end I didn't get to look at it, I mean, I could just skim through it. Then I've already read it once.
Okay.
So I just spent one day out of the week just reading a chapter. Maybe like a month out from graduation, I really started ramping it up, and I was studying more days.
Mm-hmm.
And about 3 weeks out, I started studying every day leading up to NAPLEX. I mean,
how many hours in a day?
First 2 weeks, I probably averaged about 4 or 5 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
The last week, I was literally studying like a full day's work, like
Oh,
a
wow.
full-time job, like
Okay.
8 to 10 hours.
Okay. I know that there have been people saying that you should focus heavily on the calculations. Do you find that to be a good tip?
Yeah, I think you should definitely be efficient at calculating your problems. You don't want to, because that will take up time, you sit there and calculating stuff, and you don't want to spend most of your time just trying to figure out one problem. So my best advice for that is to get fast at doing calculations and just practice it. RX Prep has a bunch of problems, hundreds of problems for you to do. I would just go ahead and do all of them.
Okay.
So
day of the test, what is the testing facility like? And can you speak a little bit about what to expect?
I would make sure you bring your IDs. I know there's a lot of complications with that. Make sure the name that you registered with the NAPP matches with your ID exactly. If your ID has your middle name, your NAPP registration has to have your middle name. You're not allowed to bring anything into the testing room. And honestly, if you have a cell phone or anything like that, the advice that everyone gives you is don't even bother bringing it into the testing building. Just leave it in your car. Because there have been mistakes before where people, you have a habit of using your phone.
Mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to be doing that at all. So during your breaks, you just want to sit there and just snack or something. But you're not really allowed to talk to anybody.
I know that my testing facility had headphones for you to put on to kind of block out ambient noise. Did yours have something like that?
Yeah, so they had the headphones, and they also give you earplugs.
Oh, wow.
Earplugs. They give you a pad to write your notes on too.
Okay, but it's not like scrap pieces of paper. It's a
No, not paper. It's like plastic laminated paper.
Okay, so like a dry erase, something like that.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
So the testing day, 6 hours. That's a long time to be sitting in one place for an exam. People say it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yes.
So should people prepare for that long of a test?
Yeah, I would definitely prepare for it. After the 6 hours, it's definitely draining. It's a very draining test. You don't realize it until you walk out of that, because you're just constantly thinking and answering questions for 6 hours straight. In preparation for that, like I said, use your practice tests that have like hundreds of questions for you to go through. Some people would time themselves. I suggest if you don't feel comfortable with how fast you take a test, go ahead and time yourself to see how you do and what's holding you up. The last few set of questions, I was actually strapped for time, and I started rushing a little bit, and I didn't like working under those conditions. So that was because probably I spent too much time on a single question, or was too stubborn on certain questions. Move on if you don't know it. Don't spend too much time on it. Don't waste time, because you'd rather be answering all of the questions than just having a lot left at the end that you didn't answer.
If you could go and talk to your past self again, or any tips and advice on what they should look out for or practice and study tips.
My best advice, like I said, is to become efficient with time. That's a big problem for a lot of people. And don't underestimate the test. The test still has questions that you may not have even known, or don't underestimate the test. Put in the time, study for it. Really long tests, and my suggestion is just to keep practicing. Read the RX Prep book and work as many problems as you can.
Last question. When you left the exam, how did you feel about it?
Good question. And most people will feel this way too. I actually did feel good about it. I actually, had a little panic because I thought I didn't do very well, but I actually did pretty good. If you put in the time, don't underestimate what you remembered, your knowledge, because some of it will be instinctive. There might be sections where you might be freaking out because you didn't look at that material and you didn't remember it very well. Just remember that it's a 250 question test and you answered a lot of questions. So there's a high chance that you may have gotten those right. So don't start panicking during the test just because you missed like a few questions in a row. It feels like a lot more because it's such a high pressure test, but you'll do better than you think if you just put in the time as far as preparation.
Very cool, very cool. All right, Tang, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I'll see you soon. Thanks, Tang, for your time. Now we're going to be talking about 5 tips and hints on the NAPLEX and what to expect from it. So first one is getting familiar with the NAPLEX. You know it's going to be 6 hours long. It's 250 questions. You are allotted 2 10-minute breaks, so you have to figure out how to use those wisely. You're going to want those about 2 hours in order to space it out appropriately so that you're not fatigued. The test is no longer adaptive, meaning that the questions won't get gradually harder and more difficult as you get more questions right, and then easier when you get more questions wrong. So now it's just going to be a straight flat test. You're not going to know if you're getting or have an idea if you're getting them wrong or right, just kind of an intuition and how well you know the material. Preparation or study materials. A lot of people and a lot of pharmacy schools nationwide use the RX Prep book. That's pretty much standard across the board. I know that I used it. My coworkers have used it as well. Tang here also used it. So that's pretty much standard, and it's a very good guide and review of what could be on the test. So I say that read that well, study that, make sure you know the material, very condensed, and it's a good overview of the material that you need to learn. It has a lot of calculations in it as well, so make sure you do those calculations and you know how to do those forwards and backwards quick and efficiently. Some people also have bought flashcards or brand generic flashcards or pharmacotherapy flashcards off of Amazon and other study sites. Those are good too if you think you need a little bit more hands-on and something different to mix it up instead of just reading something out of an RX Prep book. If you're looking for a free route, there are lots of Quizlets online that people have built just for the NAPLEX. And those can be helpful, and they have an app for it as well, so you can use it on your phone or a tablet. Study schedule. I think it's important to set up a study schedule. And how I did it was that I scheduled my test out, and then that left me with a deadline. How many days in between to study the material. From that point, I would break it down by disease states and then how much time I have to study for those. And then lastly, you need to set up a daily schedule. You have to stick to it. Think of this as like your job. This test will determine if you get your license and then start working or not. So get used to it. Wake up early, stick to a schedule, study, take breaks, have lunch, get back into it. But setting up a study schedule will help you stay on task and make sure you hit all the checkpoints. Now we're here talking about the day of the test preparation. If you're taking it in a different city than where you live, my recommendation, get in the night before, get a hotel room nearby so that you're able to get a good night's of rest. It's a long exam. It's 6 hours long, so you want to make sure that you're well rested, you're not nodding off, or sleep deprived in the middle of the test. Make sure you eat a good breakfast that morning. You don't want your stomach grumbling and not be able to focus when your stomach is just messing around down there. Tang also mentioned something that I think was pretty important. Make sure your names match on your ID and your NABP. If even one letter is off, they're not going to let you take it. You're going to have to go home, re-register, and figure it out before they'll let you back. And lastly, how to study for this effectively. I think that calculations were a big bulk of the test. Everybody's going to tell you that, and it stands true. Calculations are probably the easiest part of the test, so make sure you know how to do those forwards and backwards and quickly and efficiently, but also correctly. You want to make sure that you nail those so that you can get the bulk of majority of your points. You also want to practice test questions and efficiency in taking them. If you feel that you're lagging on a couple of questions, just take your best educated guess and move on. You want to leave the most allotted amount of time for other questions. You want to be able to finish all of your questions so that you don't leave any blank. Focus on your weaknesses. For me, again, it was for HIV and oncology, so I made an effort to study those extra. For other people, it might be the math section, or for other people, it might be brand and generic. You know yourself the best. Focus on the weaknesses and then brush up on everything else. Tang mentioned something important in there. He said that he started probably about February-ish, and it was just very simple. Maybe a chapter over a course of a weekend, and he just read it, just kind of leisurely, just looking over materials that he thought he needed help on, or maybe sections where he felt that he was weak. Study early beforehand so that when you see the material again, it wouldn't be the first time that you see it, so that you be familiar with the material and able to understand and grasp the concepts a lot better. And last but not least, be confident. You spent 4 years in pharmacy school, you've done soap notes, presentations, journal articles, papers. You're ready for this. You know this material, you can do it, have confidence. That's it, guys, for this episode of NAPLEX 2017. This has been your dose of NerdRx.